Hello, I'm Nannette Nocon. In this edition of It's About Money, we'll be talking with Dewayne McCulley, who is the author of the book, Death to Diabetes. Stay tuned in this inspirational program. Hello and welcome to another edition of It's About Money. I'm Nannette Nocon and thank you for joining us. In this edition of It's About Money, we'll be talking to Dwayne McCulley, who's the author of the book, Death to Diabetes. The reason why we're talking about diabetes in our program is because of the financial impact on families and our nation. It costs about $250,000 for a family during a 20-year period to take care of diabetes. And typically, diabetics have a 13-year less lifespan than normal life expectancy. In our nation, it costs about $135 billion annually to take care of the disease. So, Dwayne, welcome to our show. I really appreciate having you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell me first about the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, because there's a significant difference, and we're talking about type 2 today.
And see, type 1 and type 2, they are two entirely different diseases, as you just mentioned. And type 1 is more of an autoimmune disease, where the beta cells within the pancreas that produces the insulin become dormant, or they're just not functioning properly, so they don't produce insulin. Type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, is more of a lifestyle-driven disease. And in that particular case, the pancreas is working. It is producing insulin. But the cells of the body, the 70 trillion cells in your body, and they're not functioning properly, and they're not able to pull the glucose into your cells to produce energy. And because the cells can't pull in that glucose from your bloodstream, that's why your blood sugar starts to rise.
I see. Okay. So it's really something that can be controlled because it's not an autoimmune disease.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
It's exactly. It's an entirely different disease, exactly.
Now, tell me about the events in 2002 that led to all of these. What happened to you in 2002?
Yeah, well, I'd put on a little bit of weight, and I didn't think I'd put on that much weight, but maybe about 70 pounds or so. But I thought I carried it well. And my daughter had told me, "Dad, you're getting a little, you're a little on the heavy side." And I said, "No, I'm not." She goes, "Yes, you are." And I felt I was a little chunky. And I wasn't that heavy. And my daughter said, "Chunky? Dad, you passed chunky 25 pounds ago." And daughters are very honest with you. They'll tell you, And I wasn't playing any more sports, no more basketball, no more tennis. I was working long hours. And it just kind of creeps up on you. You're putting on the weight. And the next thing I knew, I woke up one morning and I couldn't move, or I had this real funny feeling. And luckily I called 911, and the next thing I know, I was in the hospital. And when I came out of the coma, and there were 3 doctors there saying, "Mr. McCulley, you're lucky to be alive, and you are a diabetic, and you'll be on insulin the rest of your life."
Your insulin level, blood glucose level was at 1,200. Is that right?
Oh yeah, it was over 1,200, 1,300. I didn't even know what it meant, but I could tell by the looks on the doctors' faces that this is not good.
So 100 is about right.
Exactly, yeah. It should be somewhere around 100, exactly.
Yeah. And so technically you should have been dead.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, yeah, because not only, I had a special type of coma, by the way. I said, "Really special?" And they said, "Yeah, Dwayne, you had what is known as a non-ketotic hyperglycemic hyperosmolar coma." And when the doctor told me that, I said, "Wow, it does sound special." Long name. And I also had another condition known as hypertriglyceridemia. I had DVT, deep vein thrombosis, so I had some blood clot issues. And so when you combine all of these health issues, according to the Merck Medical Reference Manual, I should have died 3 times over.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. So now you had that condition. The option was either to be on oral pills, but it was so bad that you had to be on insulin.
Exactly. I did not want to go on insulin because I'm afraid of needles. I said, "Give me the pill." And the doctor said, "Sorry, Dwayne, but your disease has progressed to the point that insulin is the only thing that's going to help you.
Wow. Yeah. And now tell me today, are you on any medications?
No, today, no medications, no nothing.
No insulin. Wow, brilliant.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask that question right away because I want to go into the story of how could that be?
Right, exactly.
I mean, that seems to be so impossible.
Right.
Now, your sister and your daughter, Cynthia, played a very important role in this transformation.
Right, yeah.
What did they do?
Well, between my sister, my daughter, Cynthia, my mother, you know, they all live out of town. They came to Rochester, and they took over my house. And
the women run this world.
Right, yeah, that's what I began to find out. That I said, man, this is rough. I thought, you think diabetes is bad, but you got 3 women in your house telling you when to eat, what not to eat, when to exercise, when not to exercise. You talk about stress. But the irony, Nannette, is that because they were taking care of my household and they were taking care of the meals, and my mother put me on a raw food diet, I had all this extra time, and with all this extra time, I started to do some research into diabetes in terms of, well, why am I dying? Why do they want to cut off my legs? Why is my eyesight failing? And they just said, Dwayne, this is the way the disease is. This is the way it works. But as an engineer, see, we want to know more.
Yeah, right.
Can you tell me a little more? And of course, they kind of look at you and go, well, Dwayne, there really isn't any more that you need to know. You'll be on insulin the rest of your life, and you'll have to take blood thinners because of the blood clots, and you've got to take some cholesterol medication because your cholesterol's off the charts. But you know, I was somewhat fortunate that because my mother made me eat vegetables. This is embarrassing. Here we're on television, I'm admitting this. My mother made me eat the vegetables. I did not expect that was going to do anything. And next thing I knew, my blood glucose level started to come down. It was still high, 300, 400, you know, but it was coming down. And the doctors were amazed. They said, well, Dwayne, geez, but keep taking the insulin, though. And but it just kept coming down. And then when it got back down to 100, I asked the doctors, I said, well, should I keep taking the insulin? Yeah. And it didn't make sense to me as an engineer. Well, if I'm getting back to normal, why do I have to keep taking the shots? And my motivation was more about, I don't like sticking needles into me. And 4 shots a day is a little too much. And also I was pricking my finger to do the blood glucose testing 8 times a day. So that's a lot of needles, a lot of pricking.
Ooh, yeah.
And but the irony is that this testing that I was doing 8 times a day, in most situations the doctors will tell you to test your blood sugar at least 3, 4, 5 times a day. But I'm an engineer, so I wanted to collect a lot of data. So I said, I'm going to do it 8 times a day. I didn't expect it was going to uncover anything. But I was able to correlate what was happening with my blood glucose readings, especially post-meal, with respect to the foods I was consuming. And it didn't take me that long to figure out that, yeah, certain foods, certain vegetables, certain plant oils seem to work better. Your body seems to metabolize them a lot better in the diabetic's body. And I just rode that horse. My mother made me Brussels sprouts every day, and I hate Brussels sprouts, man. Hate them. Oh, that's some.
Most people don't like them.
Some ugly little things, but I can't argue with success. And I kept eating them Brussels sprouts, and blood sugar kept going down. And so I'm very lucky, very blessed to have done that.
To have had the people in your life to be really attentive to come in and
exactly.
take care of you. I mean, they didn't have any scientific proof, but they knew that you've got to adjust to your weight and your eating habits. And
I asked my mother, how did you know Brussels sprouts, broccoli, spinach? She goes, son, God told me. I says, well, Ma, I'm a scientist. I need a little bit more than that. And of course, people started asking me as well, my engineering friends. So I had to do the research and see, is there some scientific connection? And there is a scientific connection. There's a spiritual connection. There's an emotional connection that's tied into these foods. And the foods happen to contain specific nutrients that the body is missing.
I see.
And when you give the body those nutrients, the body is very intelligent, and it will repair the cells.
I see. And then you just... So how long did it take you from the time in 2002 to the time you actually got off medication?
Good question. It took exactly 3.5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
3.5 months?
Yeah.
Months? You've got to be kidding. Wow.
Right. And here's the thing. And I was making mistakes along the way. I didn't know what I was doing, a lot of trial and error. And today, if I were able to go back in time, and given what I know today, I could probably do it in 30 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
And it's really all about, you know, your viewers, you know, the diabetics out there, they already know it's about diet and exercise. But it's not working. And it's not working because people are still eating the wrong foods.
I see. So it's got to be specific in the type of nutrition.
Exactly.
So tell me about the book that you've written. You've written this wonderful book, very inspiring, called Death to Diabetes. It talks about the 6 stages of type 2 diabetes, control and reversal.
Right.
What inspired you to write this book? I mean, it's great. It's a bestseller in Amazon. It's a bestseller for selling book for diabetes. And so tell me a little bit about the story of this.
The short answer, my mother made me write the book.
Wow. I want to meet your mother.
Yeah, she goes, write that book. You got to write the book. And my daughter says, Dad, you got to write the book. I didn't want to write a book because I knew it would be a lot of work. And I felt that there are already a lot of books out there on diabetes. You don't need another book. And my mother said, well, son, if you don't write this book, then God will bring people into your life that will eventually lead you to write the book. And of course, you know, yeah, right. And so churches started calling and asked me to come in and talk, and people would ask, are you going to write a book? And I would go, no. And then the American Diabetes Association, the director that ran the American Diabetes Association at that time, she called and said, Dwayne, would you come in and share your story? I said, yeah, sure. Same thing. Are you going to write a book? No.
That's a lot of work.
Yes, it's a lot of work. And I did everything to try not to write that book. I put together a pamphlet, you know, the 10 steps. And it was a 1-page pamphlet. Then it became 5 pages, 10 pages, 25 pages, 50 pages. After a while, my daughter says, Dad, I think you should just write the book.
You have a book. You have the skeleton of the book. You might as well get going with it.
Exactly. That's exactly what she said. So, and my mother wasn't going to let up. So it got to the point where it was just easier to write the book.
So it sounds like you've helped a lot of people with even starting with the pamphlets to inspire you to write a book.
Oh, yes. I was, and again, Nannette, I was surprised because I thought what happened to me was an anomaly, okay? And I just thought I got lucky. And my mother doesn't like that word lucky. She says, son, you were blessed. But I just thought it's not going to work for anybody else. And then when people from the diabetic support group started eating broccoli and Brussels sprouts, and they said, Dwayne, my blood sugar's coming down. I said, really? And then I realized, oh, maybe it's not an anomaly. Maybe it's not an accident. And these stories, I don't know how people, you know, I just had a little website, same name as the book, dietary.com. It was just one little page. I don't know how people were finding it, and they would write in, and of course they had more questions, and it just got to the point where, wow, I'm writing all these emails explaining this. Why don't I just put it in a book?
Sure, sure. So. You know, it's interesting to have you on the show. A number of reasons. First, your story is very inspiring. Second is that, you know, diabetes costs a lot of money for consumers and families. But third, you give me such a great example of a business model that you didn't intend to make it into a business author and going around talking to people. So very appropriate to have you in my show. So I'm really grateful that you're here. Let's take a quick break. I'm here with Dewayne McCulley, who's the author of the book, Death to Diabetes. He's experienced hardship in his health issues in 2002, but he has overcome that with a very successful story. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you don't clean up your room, the Board of Health is gonna condemn it. You make that face again, it's gonna freeze that way. If you don't get your blood pressure checked, you could have high blood pressure and not know it and die from a stroke.
We're back. I'm Nannette Nocon, and this is It's About Money. Our guest today is Dewayne McCulley, who's the author of the book Death to Diabetes. We're having a wonderful conversation about his experience, very inspiring. Dwayne, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's talk about your book a little bit more. There's a lot of information here, a lot of technical information,
Right.
but a really nice guidebook.
Right.
You've come up with many versions of the book. You're now into your third.
Yeah, version 3 of the book. When the book was originally released in 2005, I thought I knew everything about diabetes at that point. But over the past 3 years, I've uncovered more research, and so I've had to make some modifications. And so now version 3 is available on the website. Amazon still has version 1, but I got version 3 on my website.
I got it. Okay, sounds good. And you're also coming up with the CD. What motivated you to come up with the complementary complement
CD.
to it?
My daughter, she goes, "Dad, you need to put the book on CD." And I'm going, "No." She goes, "Yes, Dad." Because she said, a lot of her friends and their mothers, they work, and they don't have time to read a 400-page book. And my daughter says, just put the book onto CD so people can listen to the story and listen, to the protocols. And so I finally have given in to my daughter and put the book onto CD. That should be coming out later this year. And my daughter is also helping me write a cookbook.
Oh.
Now that's kind of funny, because I can't cook.
Okay. Isn't there a show like that?
Right, yeah. Here's the book. I can't cook.
Dwayne can't cook.
Right. My daughter said, "Dad, don't tell people you can't cook." But I can't. And so she's helping me. And she goes, "Dad, you understand the protocol, and I understand how to cook. You put those two together. People want recipes. People want to know how to eat better. And more importantly," and my daughter said, "Dad, you need to explain to people in your book how to eat ice cream. There's a way to eat ice cream."
Oh,
okay. Yeah. There's a way to eat steak, if you love a good steak, how to prepare the steak properly the night before. And so there are a lot of our favorite foods that diabetics are told, you can't have that, or if you got to put it into your plan, it seems to affect their blood glucose level and causes it to go up. And so I developed protocols that allow people to still eat their favorite foods. Okay.
Wow,
so,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have a medical background, you have an engineering background.
Exactly.
So
I'm an engineer, and if you know anything about engineers, Nannette, we just love to analyze every little thing. And that analytical background, looking at the data. And see, diabetes is, as my mother said, son, diabetes is the perfect disease for you because it's all about the data. And so diabetes is the only disease where you can sit at home, sit there and prick your finger, collect the data. You don't have to go to a lab to get your blood work. And you can figure out what's going on. And so it was the perfect disease for me as an engineer. And I just happened to have the right background that I acquired working at Hughes Aircraft and Xerox. I happened to work in a specific field of engineering that correlates to medical science.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
it doesn't even exist anymore. At that time, it was called diagnostic engineering.
I see.
And in diagnostic engineering, you do failure modes and effects analysis to try to figure out, why does the machine fail? Why does the electronics and the software fail? And how do you predict that failure? You develop operational models. Well, I took those models and applied it to the human body. And developed the flow charts, and you can apply what's known as pathogenesis and pathology in terms of medical science, in terms of understanding how a disease progresses in the human body, step by step at the cellular level. Mm-hmm. So once you understand this is how the disease progresses and you understand some of the interactions, and then it becomes a little easier to figure out how can I stop it? How can I control it? And once I control it, can I now reverse that disease?
I see.
So,
oh, it's great. It's great to have that scientific mind, always questioning, always asking, and then being able to formulate the answers in such a systematic method.
Right, yeah.
Now, one of the things I like about your book is you talk about making sure that someone who's going to follow your regimen to consult with their physician, because
exactly.
That's very
exactly. My doctor, he loved. He said, "Dwayne, you got a whole chapter on me," because it is important that everyone understands how to work with the doctor. Don't fight the doctor. Work with the doctor. Understand what the doctor can do and cannot do. Understand what you can do and cannot do. And so I provide a set of procedures. This is what you should do before you go see the doctor. This is what you should do during the appointment. This is what you should do after the appointment. And, you know, my doctor said, "Dwayne, if everybody followed this, my job would be easy."
Mm-hmm. So really taking accountability as a patient in
right.
terms of treating your disease
Right.
in partnership with the physician.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Now, how has the medical community in general accepted your book? I mean, because I'm sure there's some controversy to it.
Yeah, good news, bad news. Good news is I'm surprised that there are medical doctors who are promoting my book in New York City and Florida, Pittsburgh. But in general, for the most part, they just don't really believe that eating the right food is going to reverse type 2 diabetes. And what I tell them is, if you follow the protocol and you measure, okay, there's the numbers, there's the data, just follow the data. Now, I can't guarantee your viewers that everyone's going to beat the disease the way I did. I will guarantee this, they will be healthier. Okay, now how healthy they get, there are just too many variables to predict that.
Sure, it depends on their own situation, but,
Right.
but at least creating healthy habits. And it sounds to me like it's not really limiting the type of, I mean, it's not coming from a broad availability of food to just a narrow availability. It's just how it's prepared.
Exactly.
And just really choosing the most productive, so to speak, types of foods.
Yeah, and it's not about deprivation, because if you are told that you can't have something, like when they told me, they said, "Dwayne, no more ice cream, no more fried chicken, no more grilled cheese." And I said, "What?" This is what the dietitian told me. I said, "What?" I said, "Why don't you just put me in the ground and cover me up with the dirt? Because if I can't enjoy my favorite foods, why live?" And so one of my challenges was to understand what's the issue with steak, or what's the issue with ice cream, what's the issue with grilled cheese. And I would take all these foods and break them down in terms of their components, how the body actually metabolizes them, and how it actually affects us. And so there are ways.
I see.
All right. I'll give you just a very simple example. Ice cream, don't buy the cheap stuff. If you can, make it yourself. That's the best thing to do. Don't buy, if you buy the cheap ice cream that's got too much sugar in it, that's no good. And it doesn't have any fat, it won't satisfy you, so you eat more. So you buy the rich ice cream, you just don't eat as much. And you add walnuts to that ice cream. And you add some blueberries, because the walnuts contain plant protein, okay, and omega-3s, which help the body to slow down the absorption of sugar. And it turns out that omega-3s happens to be one of the nutrients that type 2 diabetics don't get enough of. The blueberries contain water, fiber, and antioxidants, 3 key nutrients that a diabetic needs.
I see. Oh, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is.
Really,
Yeah.
you can't remove it. Have it in moderation with an addition of a couple of different items in there.
Exactly.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, how has the how do dietitians and nutritionists, have you collaborated with them to?
Yeah, I've done classes with nutritionists and dietitians. They're still from the old school, and the old school is low-fat diet and low carb, and they don't really understand the science because their whole thought process is based on a fallacy. Okay, and the body really requires a balance of carbohydrates, protein, fat, and water. And so when you start to manipulate those proportions and you come up with a high protein or high carb, low fat, when you start to develop that type of profile, it creates a nutritional deficiency. Yeah. Okay. And nutritional deficiency drives our diseases: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, arthritis, osteoporosis, kidney failure. In most cases, except for the genetic situations, in most cases it's driven by a nutritional deficiency.
That's interesting. You can almost liken it to having a car, the different types of fuel that goes in the car.
Right,
you could have a high octane or regular premium and so on. So if you have a car that requires premium, but you put regular, the car's going to choke and not going to run, right?
Yeah. See, everyone, that's a good metaphor. Everyone understands that metaphor with respect to the car. But we're a little spoiled, okay, because God in his infinite wisdom, not to get overly religious, but he designed an engine. Our engine is allowed to take in these poisons, these processed foods, and the body still is kicking.
It's more resilient than a car.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It is amazing because we don't think of it as a vehicle as such, and we refuel through the food that we eat. So we have to be selective in what we put in there and how much and all that stuff. Well, this is really inspiring. So what's next for you?
Well, right now, as I mentioned, I am working on the cookbook with my daughter's help, and looking to work with a health services company to develop teleseminars and workshops to try to get the message out to people. Because one of the first steps is to create an awareness. Because most people aren't aware that they have these options. And in fact, most people have bought into drugs work. And once you've started taking the drugs, you buy in emotionally and spiritually into the whole drug scheme. And it's very difficult to want to give that up and say, I now have to take on more accountability and start eating proper foods. And so we're trying to create an awareness. You don't have to go on a diet of deprivation. When people ask me, why is there so much diabetes in this country? The answer is very simple. It's the lack of knowledge, okay? And so our first step through teleseminars, through the workshop, is to impart some of that knowledge, impart some of that awareness, and go from there.
I see. Well, it's truly inspiring. It's, I congratulate you for having the mind and being blessed to have gotten from where you were in 2002, 3.5 months later, being so healthy and, and promoting some of the methods that people can use in order to have a healthier life. I mean, and honestly, it's really a financial issue too, because I mean, instead of medications, you just eat healthier. You have to eat anyway. You might as well be selective in the kinds of foods that you select. Dwayne, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll have people contact you through your website, right? www.deathtodiabetes.com. And there's also an 800 number in the Wellness Center.
Yes.
And that's 1-800-954-0366.
Yes. Yes.
And thank you again, our viewers today, for watching us in Death to Diabetes, an inspiring story from Dewayne McCulley. And he's the author of Death to Diabetes. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, but was able to overcome it. Such an inspiring story. Until next time, I'm Nannette Nocon.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you have any questions for It's About Money, please email Nannette at nnocon@aol.com. This program was produced through Penfield Community Television in Penfield, New York.